Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about SCDCA's 50th anniversary. I am Carrie Gruby-Leibarker, and I'm the Administrator and Consumer Advocate for the department. So with that, let's dive in and see what we're working with today. So for our roadmap, first we're going to talk about the Department of Consumer Affairs, going to give you some background on that, how we can help you, look at some of our other duties, and then 2025, what we have planned for our year of celebration. All right, so we're going to look at our history and our purposes and just a general overview of the agency. So back in the late 60s and the 70s is when we started seeing some consumer credit laws come on the scene. Consumer credit has been around since the days of Hammurabi, but consumers weren't really using it much until you got into the late 50s and the 60s. And so there were some identified areas where folks thought some consumer protections were needed. And so we saw it first at the federal level with the Consumer Credit Protection Act, the Truth in Lending Act, and the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and then consumer product safety that came on the scene as well. And then in 1974, our state passed the South Carolina Consumer Protection Code. So the law passed August 13th, it was signed, and then August 19th, our first commissioners were appointed. So the commissioners are our policy-making body. We have 9 of them. 4 are appointed by the General Assembly, 4 by the governor, and the Secretary of State serves ex officio. And then on August 29th of 1974, the first members of our Council of Advisors on Consumer Credit were appointed. Now they are an advisory board, not a policy-making body. There are 16 of them from the different areas that we regulate here at the department, and they're all appointed by the governor. And then September 30th, Irvin Parker, also known as Pete Parker, was appointed the first administrator of the Department of Consumer Affairs. He had been heavily involved in the legislative process and worked at the Attorney General's office for some time and saw some of the issues that the code was trying to address. And so he was a good expert to have as our first administrator. November 1st, we became operational, right? They started standing up the agency, making some hires, and then on January 1 of 1975, the Consumer Protection Code went into effect. So what are the purposes of the code? There's several of them. Some are to simplify, clarify, and modernize consumer credit, provide rate ceilings, educate consumers, and foster competition amongst businesses, protect folks from unfair practices, but giving due regard to those businesses that act honestly and fairly, permit and encourage the development of fair and economically sound credit practices. And then there was some desire to make the consumer credit laws uniform across different jurisdictions and align us with the federal law as well. What's interesting about these purposes is that they align with a report that the South Carolina retail industry provided to the legislature 4 years prior to the law being adopted. It really was industry too that was pushing to have consumer protection laws in place. They wanted to get rid of loan sharks. They wanted to level the playing field in the marketplace. They wanted state agencies to regulate consumer credit as opposed to the federal agencies. And so it's really interesting to see how they align with what actually happened. They were very successful in their endeavors. So we often get asked at the department, well, let me rephrase that. We don't get asked who is a consumer. People just assume that issues are consumer issues, and so they fall under the purview of our agency. But we are an agency that is governed by the laws that are passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, or passed by the governor too. And so we have definitions that tell us what we can and cannot do, and statutes that tell us as an agency what we can and cannot do. So an important one is the definition of consumer. So it's the buyer or lessee or debtor to whom credit is extended in a consumer transaction. It does expand a little bit for some of the other chapters that we have that don't necessarily deal with credit, but it just essentially deals with somebody who is buying a product or a service for personal, family, or household use. And then a creditor is somebody who grants credit in a credit transaction, which includes a credit sale, a loan, a lease, or rent-to-own transaction. So our mission generally is to protect consumers from inequities in the marketplace through advocacy, mediation, enforcement, and education. But stay tuned because that mission statement is going to be updated. Spoiler alert. So we have 47 FTEs, full-time employees, currently at one office location in Columbia, the state capital. And we have over 120 statutes to administer and enforce, and then have some regulations. I think there's 41 regulations that accompany those statutes we administer and enforce as well. And our responsibilities, as the law lays it out, can be broken down into these categories. Go ahead and show them all, Bailey. So we're to process consumer complaints. We're supposed to intake them, mediate those through voluntary mediation, and refer those that go to other agencies. We are to cooperate with Attorney General's offices and other state, federal, or local agencies that have consumer protection responsibilities. We're to educate consumers, but also businesses, and that's where the encouraging of honest and fair business practices comes into play. We get to recommend laws to the legislature and amendments that will protect consumers. We initiate actions on our own, that's enforcement, or otherwise represent the consumer interest, and then develop specific educational material required by law. That includes a little brochure when folks go into supervised lending offices that explains rights and different definitions there. We also have solar brochures, materials that we're to create as well. There's a couple other ones too. So that's the history, and then kind of a general overview of who we are and what our responsibilities are. But how does that break down into the services that we're providing today? So number one is filing complaints, right? Most people know us for that. And we get about 4,000, we used to say 4,000 complaints annually. But last calendar year, we got over 5,800 complaints. And that's a trend, an uptick that we've been seeing since COVID. But in our 50 years, our department has mediated 225,000 complaints. We also take special kind of complaints, ID theft reports and scam reports. We've received those responsibilities in 2013. It was after the Department of Revenue security breach. And so we've had 4,200 or over 4,200 identity theft reports made to our agency since we got that responsibility, and almost 16,000 scam reports. So you can file a complaint by going onto our website. We have an online complaint system that's available 24/7. We also have a complaint form that can be downloaded and mailed in, or you can call us and we're happy to mail a complaint form to you. We take consumer complaints that, again, personal, family, or household use based. If it's an issue that's regulated by somebody else, we'll kick it out to them. If it's not regulated by anybody, we'll do voluntary mediation. If it's regulated by us, it'll go to our legal division for review. You can also file a scam form on our website, or you can call us to make that report. And then if you are a victim of identity theft, we provide one-on-one guidance to walk you through the steps to remediate that identity theft event. And you can file an identity theft report by going online as well. You can also give us a call. We'll just have to ask a lot of questions to make sure that we guide you appropriately. And I think the next slide shows the identity theft reporting form or intake form. Great. So you can file a complaint with us, you can report a scam, you can report identity theft. All these services are provided for free, but then you can also background a business with our office. And so I mentioned the 120 statutes that we have under our jurisdiction. So it wasn't always that way. So we were initially created to take those consumer complaints, regulate the consumer credit marketplace generally, and intervene in certain rate-making actions over the Public Service Commission or before different federal agencies. But over time, we've had specific statutes that give us regulatory authority over an industry, which means they have to register or file or get a license with our office. So in the mid to late 80s, we had 4 programs, and then that was expanded in the 90s with an additional 3, in the 2000s with an additional 3, and then 3 more after that. And we just got 1. I don't even think I put the new earned wage access registration on there that just became effective in November of last year. So in our 50 years, we have processed 270,000 applications and filings. And I think something of note Or I should say, that was the first 40. And then in the last 10, over 242,000. So it's around 510,000 applications and say that 10 times fast. Applications and regulatory filings processed, 510,000, a large portion occurring just in the last 10 years because of that expanded authority that we just talked about. And we keep seeing them go up. These are some of our laws in the Consumer Protection Code that regulate industry specifically. We have Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 because folks who are charging over 18% APR in a consumer credit transaction have to file their maximum rate with us. And then we have consumer credit counseling, continuing care retirement communities, and prepaid legal services that have their own special laws that they have to comply with. And then some of the other laws that we have as well are athlete agents, those Jerry Maguires of the world, mortgage brokers, motor clubs, pawnbrokers, physical fitness services. If you're going to join that gym in the new year trying to be fit, they have to register with us to make sure they have the proper registration. Pre-need funeral contracts and professional employer organizations all have their specific statutes that we administer and enforce. So with all of this information, we have the ability to provide you to search and look up a business to make sure that if they are required to have a license or a registration, that they have one. So if you go to our website, you can look up the business and you can, go ahead, Bailey, and you can shop and compare around. You can make sure they're licensed. We have links to other state agencies that license like contractors, insurance, other questions that we get a lot about. We refer you over to them so you can check their licenses there. And you can also look up licenses by industry. I think it's on the next slide, a picture of our industry licensee registration lookup page. So we have Excel spreadsheets for all of our licenses. You can call us too to make sure somebody is licensed, or if you don't know if they need a license with our office, call us and check too, right? That little bit of time that you take to background a business can save you a headache in the long run for sure. You can also search our complaints against businesses, whether they're registered or not. So we make that available to you. You can search by name, you can search by part of the name, and just because somebody has a complaint doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do business with them. You certainly want to make sure they responded to the complaint, but you can look at the nature of the complaint, see how many of them there are, just to inform yourself before you turn over your hard-earned money. You can also compare rates and charges. So I mentioned the maximum rates having to be filed with us. Those APRs are available online, and also motor vehicles dealers often charge a closing fee on a vehicle. Those are filed with us, and you can compare those online for those who charge it as well. Yep, and that's just the online search engine. Easy peasy for those complaints. All right, so we also offer free presentations. When I went over our responsibilities, education came up a couple of times. And so that is a core component of our mission. We want to make sure that consumers and businesses are aware of their rights and responsibilities under the law. So looking over just the last decade, we've given over 1,200 presentations to 51,000 consumers and over 10,000 of our business members. We're still kind of honing our numbers for what occurred in the first 40 years, but I'm sure it's over 3,000 presentations given there. So you'll have to stay tuned for more of that information. So we have about, on average, 27% of our staff gives presentations every year. Ditch the Pitch Bingo is our most popular presentation, or Identity Theft and Scams as well. Ditch the Pitch Bingo takes different tips and puts it in the bingo format. And so that's a fun way to have us come out and educate. But there's a sundry of different topics that we can present on. ID theft scams is always the most popular. Consumer credit or credit reports or debt collection is really popular as well. But you can go to our website and fill out a presentation request form. We have some of our standard presentations we give, but there's also an opportunity for you to ask for something specific. And again, we speak to consumer groups, but also businesses too. We want to make sure everybody knows what's going on so we can have a healthy, thriving marketplace. All right, so you can file a complaint, report a scam, report ID theft, background that business, request free presentations, and come to us with your questions. So we kind of have a catch-all here. We have a live receptionist at our front desk, and on average, we get about 25,000 calls annually From 2019 to 2024, we had 138,000. And then our website, we have lots of publications, linked to our social media, links to our YouTube videos, all sorts of great information on our website. And from 2019 to 2024, we had over 1.1 million folks visiting our website. And then our YouTube videos, which we went live in 2008, we've had over 183,000 views of those videos. We try to take our presentations that we give and put those online in case people miss them for that information. Bailey also does these great shorts on little tips that people can watch. It's like 20 seconds. Some of them go up to like a minute. We have how-tos, how to file a complaint, information on our complaint process, how to use our licensing platform, all sorts of great information there. And from 2012 to 2024, there have been over 4,000 hours watched on our YouTube channel, which is really cool. As far as our publications goes, over 50 of them on a variety of consumer topics, from scam to ID theft, business education, financial literacy, how to avoid a scam, if you want to dispute items on your credit report, all sorts of great stuff. You can go to our website and order free brochures of 6 of our publications. That includes Ditch the Pitch, our guide for guarding against scams, credit reports, what they are and why they matter, how to prevent ID theft, an auto guide for consumers, and recovering from a disaster. And there they are in their glory. And I'll say the blue one, Identity Theft in the Law, is our business presentation that goes over the South Carolina state laws and how businesses need to protect consumers' personal identifying information. We are revamping that, and we'll hopefully get that out soon and are happy to send that to businesses. It's one of the ones you can request up to 50 copies of via our website. So we've talked about the processing of those consumer complaints. We've talked about educating consumers and educating businesses on rights and responsibilities. And we've talked, let's see, was there one more? Yeah, and developing that specific educational material. But we haven't talked yet about how we are to enforce the law and cooperate with other state and federal agencies, and the responsibility of recommending new laws and amendments to protect consumers. So that's one of the areas that the administrator gets to do, is go over to the State House. We draft legislation. We participate in the process. If somebody else has drafted something that's going to impact consumers, we may go over and testify, provide data that we could have that's relevant to that particular topic, or we may see a gap where a law is needed or something that needs to be amended because of the impact on business or consumers, the credit marketplace generally. And so we advise the legislature and the governor on those things. And then as far as cooperating with other state and federal agencies, sometimes that's through the complaint mediation process, or refer those out. But other times it's through enforcement. We've been working a lot with local police recently, especially on scams and the use of crypto ATMs in those scams, and also in getting legislation together too. Through that cooperation stuff, there may be some items that come to fruition to try and address those issues. And then the initiate actions or otherwise represent the consumer interest. So we get to go to every court to enforce the various laws under our jurisdiction. It could be administrative law court, it could be federal court, it could be a state court, and that's over our licensing, our regulatory statute. So it could be that somebody didn't get a license and they were supposed to get a license, or it could be that somebody took money and they didn't put it in a trust account, and there may be a criminal action that we're looking to pursue there. But we have attorneys, we have investigators, and they get to go forward in administering and enforcing those laws. We also represent the consumer interest over at the Public Service Commission in utility matters, and it deals with gas, water, sewer, and electric filings. Whenever somebody is looking to take an action, a utility company, that is going to impact a consumer's rates, then we can get involved. This was something that we were able to do from, I think it was 1978 until 2004. And then that responsibility was moved to a newly created agency, but it was given back to us in 2018 in the wake of the VC Summer case. So we've been active since 2019 over at the Public Service Commission doing that. We also submit comment letters to state and federal agencies on rules or regulations, whether or not it's proposed or finalized, whatever, part of the process, is to give, again, data and information to inform the policymaking and let them know how we think from our experience the regulation or the rule is going to play out and whether or not it can be fine-tuned. So with all of our complaint taking and our enforcement actions from 1975 to 2014, we've gotten almost $3 billion back in consumers' credit refunds and adjustments. The advocacy division was a huge part of that, especially early on when we had that responsibility and we were intervening in telephone cases. That was a huge component of that $2.9 billion. And then our services division, we mentioned all those complaints, over 200,000 complaints we processed. There's been 25 million in consumer credits, refunds, and adjustments just in those first 40 years. The legal division, through the enforcement, it was over 9.5 million, and the identity theft unit over 141,000. So that's the first 40 years. So since then, we've gotten about $90 million in credits, refunds, and adjustments just in the last 10 years. And again, it's through all of our divisions and all the work that they're doing to protect consumers while giving regard to those businesses acting honestly and fairly. So what's next in our year of celebration? This webinar kind of kicked off our celebration. I will say we did do some celebrating back in August whenever the law had the anniversary of when it was actually signed into law, because we love to eat around here and we love to celebrate. And my husband always tells me, that I tend to like to celebrate my birthday more than just on the day. Like it's all of a sudden a birthday weekend, or there's a birthday week, or I try and stretch it out as long as possible. So we are doing that with our 50th anniversary, and we're going to have a whole year of celebration. So we rolled out our new logo, which you see at the top of the screen there. We're also going introspective, and we have a revised mission and vision statement that we will be releasing. We're going to do a commemorative journal that's similar to the journal we did for our 30th anniversary and our 40th anniversary. If you'd like to look at those, they're available under the About Us section on our website. And we'll do a corresponding video to go with that. And wait, there's much, much more. So just stay tuned to make sure you are on our list so you can see all the fun things that we'll be doing to celebrate our 50th anniversary. So make sure you're connecting with us. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, check out our YouTube channel and all those videos that we have mentioned. You can email us with any questions that you may have at scdca@scconsumer.gov. Call us toll free. That says toll free in South Carolina. I need to remove that because we are now toll free nationwide. So give us a call. You can visit our website, and the majority of the services that we've talked about today can be accessed via our website. But always feel free to give us a call. Again, that live receptionist will be happy to pick up. And then the next slide just shows an additional how to get to some of those areas that we talked about with the search for complaints, the sign up for email updates, order free brochures, and licensee lookup. All right, I see there are a couple of questions. Let's see if I can access that. Okay, so somebody asked if they can get free presentations. Let's see, they have 433 homes, publications, and would like to get publications to all. So you can certainly reach out to us. I would recommend that you give us a call so that we can connect you with somebody in our public information and education division to see if we have that amount that we can provide to you at that point in time, or if there's a partnership opportunity to where we can give you the publication that you can get printed on your own too. But certainly give us a call and we can try and accommodate that large request. Because that is, I mean, we can print stuff all day long, but if we don't get it in the hands of those who need it, then it's for naught. Okay, so somebody said, what is the best way to request in-person presentation? So our presentation request form is the best way. It gives us all the information that we need to be able to determine if we can provide your presentation, which we try to do, especially within the time frame that's requested. If you have multiple options for dates, that's always good to put that on there. If we can, then it'll help us with slotting it in. It is exciting that we have added to our public information and education team. So we have more folks that can go out and hit the ground to give these presentations. So I would say the presentation request form is certainly the best way to start. with making your request for a presentation. But yeah, we'll give presentations to homeowners associations, to senior groups, to churches, any kind of consumer group, and again, the businesses as well. All right, looking to see if there are any more questions. All right, I'm not seeing any. If you think of something after we end the presentation, again, please feel free to call us or shoot us an email. We'll be happy to keep in touch and be able to answer that question for you. Thank you again for spending time with us today to learn a little bit about our history here at the department and how we can serve you. We hope to see you in the future on another webinar. We do these Wednesday webinars every Wednesday, unless it's a holiday, at 10:30. They're usually about 30 to 45 minutes long. You can check out the upcoming offerings on our website at consumer.sc.gov. Scroll down to the calendar, and that's where you can view them and register for those. So I hope everybody stays warm, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future, either on a webinar or maybe at a celebration event. Take care.